Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into one of Carl Jung's most powerful and, frankly, most unsettling theories. And we're going to unpack it all through the story of one person, a case study that really brings this whole idea to life.
So, let's kick things off with a scenario, a psychological portrait submitted for your approval that might just hit a little too close to home for some of you. Picture this, a man who, on the surface, seems to have every possible advantage. He's a passenger in a life of privilege, but deep down where it counts, he is completely and utterly paralyzed, stuck.
We're going to call this man Michael. And his story, well, it's not just his story. It's a window into a powerful psychological concept, a kind of trap that affects way more people than you might think.
So, meet Michael. On paper, the guy is perfect. He's 38, handsome, went to all the best schools, comes from a great family. He can charm anyone at a dinner party. His whole life looks like this perfectly curated series of accomplishments.
But all that perfection, it's really just the gold plating on a cage. You look a little closer and you see that paralysis we talked about. He's never really built anything that was his, never taken a real risk in his career. His ambition has been swapped out for a much safer goal. Just don't mess up, don't cause any embarrassment.
You know, there's actually a name for this condition, one that Jungian psychologists came up with. It's called the puer aeternus. It's Latin for the eternal boy. He's a man trapped not by iron chains, but by the invisible, and often much stronger, chains of a very particular kind of love.
Okay, so where do these chains even come from? How does this paralysis start? To get to the bottom of that, we have to turn to one of Carl Jung's most fundamental and, honestly, kind of terrifying ideas.
Jung believed that deep down in our collective unconscious, this shared part of the human mind, we all have these built-in patterns, or archetypes, and one of the most powerful is the archetype of the Great Mother. Now, this isn't your personal mom we're talking about. It's the deep, primal idea of mother that exists in every single one of us. And here's where it gets really interesting. This one archetype has two powerful sides. On the one hand, you have the nurturing mother. She's the source of life, the safe harbor that a child needs to grow strong. But every light casts a shadow, and the shadow here is the devouring mother. Her love isn't about growth, it's about possession. Her goal, conscious or not, is to keep her child dependent, weak, her little boy, forever.
Now, this is so important to understand. We are not talking about evil mothers. This is not about pointing fingers or laying blame. What we're doing is diagnosing a psychological dynamic that is almost always unconscious. The mother who builds this prison usually does it out of her own deep-seated fear, and what she tragically, truly believes is an immense and protective love.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually play out? How are the bars of this cage actually forged in the day-to-day of real life?
The control really comes down to four main tools. They're subtle, often hard to pin down, but they are incredibly effective at keeping a son psychologically tied to her. Let's break down a couple of the big ones.
First up, overprotection. She solves all his problems, she fights his battles for him, she shields him from the exact pain and struggle that are necessary to forge a man's soul. It's like keeping a lion in the most comfortable, safest zoo imaginable. You've guaranteed its safety, sure, but you have stolen its power, its very essence, its wildness.
And then you've got conditional praise. She showers him with love and affection, but not for being independent or strong. No, it's when he's the good boy, the one who is compliant, thoughtful, and always close to her. This praise literally becomes an addictive drug. He gets wired to believe that feeling good about himself comes only from making her happy, not from his own accomplishments out in the world.
So as you can imagine, over the years, the consequences of this dynamic just keep building, and they are nothing short of catastrophic for a man's psychological development.
His ambition, his will to power, that fire in his belly, it just becomes a source of deep anxiety. His internal idea of the feminine gets all tangled up with his mother, so he can't form healthy, equal relationships. And underneath it all, this deep, unspoken resentment starts to build, a shadow self, which leads to this really tragic split in how he relates to women. And this internal damage, it just wreaks havoc on his relationships. He unconsciously starts sorting all women into two boxes. You've got the Madonna, the good women he can respect but feels absolutely no desire for, and then you have the whore, women he can desire physically but can never really connect with or respect. He is fundamentally unable to fuse love and lust together for one person.
So after hearing all that, if you're trapped in a psychological prison that deep, What on earth is the way out?
And let me tell you, the answer isn't something you're going to find in some feel-good self-help book. This isn't about positive affirmations. The path out is far, far more brutal and way more profound.
Escaping this cage requires an act that is going to feel to both the man and his mother like a fundamental, unforgivable betrayal. It means facing that deep, primal terror every child has of being abandoned by the very source of its life and choosing to walk right through that fire anyway.
So the absolute key is this. To save his own soul, the man has to symbolically kill the good son his mother needs him to be. He has to be willing to be seen as selfish, as ungrateful, as the bad guy. He must set boundaries that feel like declarations of war. And then, and this is the hardest part, he has to hold that line, even when he's hit with a tidal wave of her guilt or her sadness, without flinching and without apologizing.
The whole point of this explainer wasn't to offer some simple 5-step cure. That would be a lie. The purpose was to provide a diagnosis, to turn on the lights in a prison cell you might not have even known you were in. This knowledge, this framework, that is the key.
But here's the bleak and terrifying truth. You and only you can find the courage to put that key in the lock. Only you can decide to turn it, push open that heavy door, and walk out into the painful, blinding, and absolutely glorious sunlight of an authentic life.